Super moves are the ultimate weapon to finish combos and put an end to the opponent. They're usually flashy and always deal more damage than regular attacks, but sometimes they can be more than all that. Sometimes they can even take the player off guard and surprise them by how original and unorthodox they can be, either with something lore related or with a cheeky reference to an entirely different game or media. Such is the case of these 15 supers in the King of Fighters series. Some of them are mighty strong, others are quite useless, and there are those that are just wacky as heck. But the common thing between all of them is how unexpected they are. Without further ado, here's the top 15 surprising / unexpected supers in KOF. Let's start big with one of the bosses of the Nest saga, Zero. In actuality, this position isn't reserved to Zero more than it is to Ron, the mysterious Hisoku traitor whose story has yet to reach any conclusion. During Zero's hidden desperate move, he summons his 3 subordinates to beat the crap out of the opponent. But before that, he makes Ron separate the soul of the poor victim from their body. After the beating is done, he returns the soul to their owner, and only after that they realize how much damage they have taken. Let's take a moment to process all that. This guy can effortlessly take the soul of a person and return it at will. Does that mean that he could just throw the soul away and thus insta-kill anybody he wants? Can he put the soul into another body aside from the original owner? There are a lot of implications that the super drops with no way of confirming or refuting them. But one thing is sure, it's terrifying that Ron has so much power and is yet to appear as a playable character. La Cachorra is one of Kula's supers in KOF 2002 and UM. Kula jumps on her opponent's back and summons her allies Foxy, Diana and Candy to perform a wacky dance. The main gimmick of this super is that it drains one stock of the opponent's meter. But despite the seemingly strong points of this desperate move, you will rarely see a player execute it. The reason is the laughable amount of damage it deals, making it a pretty useless super, especially compared to Kula's other tools. That's why a lot of players aren't even aware of its existence. I personally like this super, even if it's not very useful. Seeing Kula clapping her hands happily and her overseer repeating La Cachorra after her is heartwarming. She had this super during the Nest saga at a time when she was still considered a somewhat of a cold villain and hasn't become yet the bubbly character that she is in recent games. Athena is a regular get in these lists. She's one of the easiest characters to play for beginners and has one of the hardest supers to execute paradoxically. Her presence in this list is due to 2 things however. The first is her level 2 super in 98. Sometimes, and for totally arbitrary reasons, Athena strips into her bikini. Why she does that? At first I had no idea. It was weird and very uncharacteristic of her, but with a little bit of research, that seemingly cheap fanservice is a callback to Princess Athena, the main protagonist of an old side-scroller game, and whom Athena is a descendant / reincarnation. That Athena is also present in SVC Chaos and Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. The second reason for her presence here is her climax super in 14 and 15. Athena is a fan of Frieza, it seems, one of the iconic villains of Dragon Ball Z. She mimics his pose of the creation of the purple fireball with her fingertip and the throwing from the sky very convincingly. Only Athena keeps her cutesy laugh while destroying her opponent, and the planet doesn't explode in 5 minutes thankfully. I mentioned this super in a previous video, but I have to talk about it again, as it remains one of the best secrets that I discovered by pure luck in KOF 15. Chizuru's climax in 15 has a slightly different version when it's done against one of the Orochi team members. We can hear a different voice talking along Chizuru's. That voice belongs to Chizuru's dead twin sister Maki, who was originally the heir of the Yata clan before she was found and eliminated by Genet. Since the Orochi team are also heavily kings, like in it, you can see why Maki would have things to say and scores to settle with them. It's true that this small change doesn't add anything to the super gameplay wise, but it is a cool little detail if you're a fan of the lore. Shizuru is not the only character who benefits from this treatment. Iori has also a similar thing going on with his super. The Orochi voice that can be heard in his climax is absent against any member of the Orochi team, and this makes sense. Why would Orochi intervene against one of his most devout followers? And speaking of Iori, one of Iori's most defining features is his purple flame, a curse that he suffers from since his ancestor made a pact with Orochi. The purple flame is arguably greater than the crimson one, but the price for it is a short lifespan and the constant risk of succumbing to the rite of the blood. But the crimson flame that the Yasakani clan had originally isn't completely suppressed. The first time that was shown was when Iori attacked Genet in 96, and the second time was during his desperate move in 2003. During this super, Iori uses a similar move to the one he used against Orochi at the end of 97. He holds his opponents by the neck, preventing them from moving, then proceeds to burn them with pure crimson flames. I don't know what I love the most about this super. Is it the reference to how he dealt with Orochi, or the fact that despite the curse, Iori is still capable of conjuring his untamed crimson flame? I wish if we could see more of this super in the future. A little bit of context is needed for this entry. I totally skipped KOF 2001 when it came out. At the time, the arcades were no longer as popular as they were in the 90s, and that installment, let's just say, wasn't the highlight of the series. But I came back to KOF in the following sequel 2002, which was a much better game and one of the most popular episodes, and that was the first time when I saw K49 and his crazy desperate move. I need to specify that at the time I haven't watched the Akira movie yet and wasn't aware of the reference. So this thing, it was original and it was shocking. Up to that point, I've never seen something like this before. Every super in KOF looked so tame in comparison. This one looked savage, wild and painful all at the same time, and it was awesome. Of course it no longer has the same impact now that I know the original source material, but the initial surprise and impression I had are forever burned into my memory. Muimui is an already forgotten character who made her one and only appearance in KOF 14, suffering the same fate as many other figures of that game. She was in a team with Nakoruru and Loveheart. At first glance, she looks very similar to Shanfei, a young Chinese girl who is very efficient in Kung Fu with an insatiable appetite. But the comparison ends when Muimui pulls out a Kamehameha-like super out of nowhere. However, the most surprising thing about her is her climax super. Muimui summons a freaking dragon and punches her opponent hard enough to send them directly into its mouth. If you don't know Muimui's origin, this super is quite shocking. How can she do that? Muimui is a character from a Apache slot game named Dragon God, and her backstory states that she is the descendant of a dragon clan. Unfortunately, we don't know much beyond these details. Still, summoning a giant dragon so casually makes her quite the OP character. I mean, why does she even need to fight with her bare hands if she can do that? Making her debut in KOF in the 11th episode, Jene saw her move list enriched with a new desperation move that she didn't have in Garou. Ennui Mademoiselle, her climax super, acts as a parry that punishes the attacker in the most humiliating and over-the-top way possible. Jene gets super angry, takes off one of her shoes and starts beating the crap out of her opponent's head. Then she smacks them one last time hard enough to send them flying to the sky before she realizes that she went too far and that the cameras were rolling. She finally puts her shoe back and apologizes with a wink. Kudos for Janae's facial animation when she gets angry. This is one of the most insulting supers in the series, for its victim that is. For everyone else, it's pretty funny. It's even funnier when executed against a serious character like Otoma Raga. It doesn't matter if she's the goddess of destruction from another dimension, she's still no match against Janae's Shu. Since she was first introduced in Art of Fighting 3, Kasumi's main purpose was to find her missing father Todo, who disappeared since he was defeated by Ryo. The Todo family are very gung-ho when it comes to pride and honor. Losing to Ryo made Todo feel a great deal of shame that pushed him into hiding for years. He was so good at hiding that he even traveled to the past, though it's not certain that this is canon. In actuality, he is never that far from his daughter. He even helps her during her hidden desperation move in ShoryuGame, when he jumps out of nowhere and performs a Shou Kasaniate behind his daughter's back. The super made of the combined power of father and daughter is brutal. Even Kasumi is surprised by its destructive power and suspects that someone was helping her, shown by her over-the-shoulder glance. The best part about this super is that should you cause a KO with it, you get an alternative win pose of Kasumi with Todo hiding behind a bush. The winner of the top 10 craziest characters list, Xanadu was bound to appear in this one too. Everything about these characters is wacky as heck, from his weird moves, his nonsensical quotes, to when he slowly turns his head towards the camera and stares directly at the player's soul. But his climax super takes the cake when it comes to portraying the sheer insanity of Xanadu. During the Wisdom, yes, that's his super's name, he unleashes all his rage at the opponent by screaming, kicking, punching like the deranged individual that he is. And then, he suddenly stops when he sees a mysterious light in the sky. He receives some kind of revelation before he ends the super by shouting Eureka. Just what is this light? Are we seeing it from his point of view? Or does it really exist and Xanadu was onto something all along? Then again, he did burn the prize money because of potatoes. Yeah, he's just crazy. Foxy was one of the villains of the Nest saga and one of the rare characters who stayed loyal to the Syndicate until the very end. Her loyalty is praiseworthy, although it can also be considered pretty overzealous. She was ready to do anything for her organization. Case in point, her hidden super in ShoryuGame. She has one of the most shocking desperation moves in the series. This super move sees her take a rather radical approach to take down her opponents by blowing them up in an explosion and sacrificing herself in the process. This super causes an instant KO to Foxy and her victim, no matter how much life they have left, if it lands successfully of course. If not, then only Foxy will be KO'd. No super in the entire series was more worthy of the name Desperation Move. But the best thing about it, or the worst, is the lullaby-like song that Foxy hums just before she blows herself up. The sweet melody clashes with the violent nature of the super, giving the whole thing an eerie feeling. But I guess it makes sense in the end. Foxy is about to put her opponent to sleep, permanently. Are you really surprised that I'm putting my boy Yamazaki yet in another list? Of course he's in here too. This time it's thanks to his famous desperation move, Drill. The best thing about this super is the many variations it has. You can reach up to 4 levels depending on how fast you can mash the buttons when Yamazaki is doing his charge animation. And of course, each level deals more damage than the one below it. However, I want to stop a moment at the 3rd level. In KOF 14 and 15, this level has its own variations. Yamazaki uses random objects to smack his opponent to the ground before sending them flying to the sky. And these objects can be pretty funny sometimes, including a poster of Antonov, the head of a big squirrel statue, a giant fish, or my favorite, the poster of Athena. There is no telling what he's going to use, and that's what I like the most about it. I've seen players online purposefully stopping at level 3 and sacrificing additional damage just to see what Yamazaki is going to pull out. Also, shout out to his hidden SDM in ShoryuGame. Biting and lifting the opponent with his mouth never gets old. But at least it's just a harmless little bite. Speaking of bites. Yeah, I know, that's another entry that I have already talked about in a previous video, but how can I not put Vice's cannibal corpse in this list? Yep, just as its name implies, Vice is a cannibal. Her hidden DM is a parry move. She starts walking toward her victim, and when they attack her, she counters them by throwing them to the ground, then jumps on them. The screen fades to black, but the sound and blood effect during that moment leaves little doubt to what's happening. Unlike Yamazaki, Vice bites and chews on her opponent. Some comments in the last video pointed out that Vice doesn't actually eat her opponent. She just bites a chunk of their bodies and spits it out at the end, as if that's supposed to make her look better. It doesn't. But at least I can say this, she does wipe her mouth with her sleeve when she's done, like a true well-mannered lady. In KOF 14, Chang has one of the funniest and craziest supers in the entire series. He swings his iron ball and hits his opponents so violently that he makes them disappear from one end of the screen and reappear from the other. He basically makes them do a voyage around the world. I know that the whole thing is supposed to be a joke and shouldn't be taken seriously, but if you analyze this super ever so superficially, you'll come to two major conclusions. 1. Chang is one of the strongest beings in KOF for having this much power. 2. His victim is even stronger for surviving a trip around the globe at a speed of light or even faster, not to mention surviving the initial blow that sent them flying in the first place. With a blow this powerful, their body should be disintegrated into small molecules. The icing on the cake of this super is Chang's reaction. Seeing him startled when his victim falls behind him is gold. Even he is surprised by what he had just done. As a response to Dan Hibiki, the Street Fighter character who was created to make fun of Ryo and Robert, SNK chose to target the big baddie of their rival series in person. The result was the creation of their own version of Akuma, only a lot cuter. Yuri Sakazaki existed before all the story begins, true, but as time went on, she started gaining more and more of other famous characters' moves, but with a silly and unrefined twist to them, Akuma being the main target of her mimicry. The air fireball, the Tatsu, the dive kick, the multiple Shoryuken super, and finally, and that's the reason of her being the number one of this list, the Raging Demon, or by its actual name, Shin Yurisatsu in KOF 2001. But unlike the aforementioned moves, Yuri mimics this super perfectly, from the animation to the unblockable part to the exact input execution, and of course, no Raging Demon is complete without the iconic final pose with the back facing the camera, which Yuri doesn't shy from mimicking as well. It's too bad that Yuri no longer has this super in recent games. I understand why they removed it, since it was never meant to be taken seriously, but man, the first time I saw it, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was surprising, crazy, and hilarious all at the same time, and that's why it's my number one wackiest and unexpected super in the KOF series. Now it's your turn to tell me what's your favorite super in KOF, the one that took you off guard the first time you saw it. I'd like to read your answer in the comments. Special thanks to my patrons for their support. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and why not consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.